ship. Who are you going to be? Which side are you going to be on? Crazy times, guys. World needs war, right? The elites need war. War is one of these things that basically resets a lot of mechanisms within hemispheres, within countries, within economies, and it always brings people back to work, you know? So I got some cool stuff to talk about as it pertains to this elites need war kind of a situation. I'm going to make the case that we're basically living in the past, right? We are defending ghosts, as they say. The reason we're basically living in the past is because our entire elite structure in America today is made up of geriatric old people, right? Our Congress, what's the average age, like in the 60s now? We're defending policies that were relevant in the 60s, you know, and again, the things that these old people were afraid of, they're planning for today. And if you look at the rhetoric that's going on in the Middle East right now, basically Marco Rubio is acting like Donald Rumsfeld, right, during the Bush years. And this guy is throwing out all this bellicose language, and he's basically acting like, you know, you're going to do what we want or we're going to go to war. And Rubio is also putting out a lot of questionable information, right, as he's trying to build his case for this conflict over the Middle East. It's essentially like, hey, you know, they got yellow cake over there, right? Remember that from Rumsfeld? So yeah, I don't know that we're going in the right direction here with this particular topic, but I will give you some information. Like I said, you're not going to get anywhere else. You know, I'm going to tell you things that no one's talking about as it pertains to the Middle East, as it pertains to how our politicians are thinking, as it pertains to how our elites are thinking, especially what our president is thinking right now. So my name is Eric Wilk. I own the Splendid Car here in St. Louis, Missouri. I am a small furniture manufacturing business owner. We have about 8 employees. We do a small 7 figures in revenue, and it's a great way to make money. You know, we make beautiful furniture. We're known for our high gloss lacquer coating. We make all of our furniture right here in America using American labor and using American people and American hardwoods and American plywoods, and a fantastic way to make money. You know, so I encourage anyone that's interested in growing a business, learning about business, you into furniture, you want to learn to paint. So I got all that kind of stuff on my channel. I talk about, you know, how I work with metal, how I polish brass. I mean, just all kinds of fun stuff on there for people that are interested in working with their hands or starting a small business as someone who's not the brightest, you know, the sharpest knife in the block, as they say. So anyway, let's get on to it, okay? I want to paint you guys a picture, all right? So roll with me on this, you know, and I'll keep the Starship Trooperisms, you know, going into this entire conversation because Starship Troopers is an amazing movie. What we got to think about with the Middle East right now is that we're acting like it's 1970, right? Like we're acting like we get so much oil from the Middle East. The Middle East is just this super important part of the region, or excuse me, part of the world. And if we don't keep it cool and calm, that it's going to disrupt oil flow, right? It's going to disrupt natural gas flow. It's going to disrupt our economy because our economy is built on oil, right? So I don't hear a lot of people talking about why the Middle East is in fact not important at all. Like it literally means nothing to us from an oil standpoint. And people are thinking, like, what do you mean? Like, that's the oil mecca of the world, okay? So some of the things you guys need to understand about the Middle East is, I got a handy dandy little chart here for you guys. And what this chart basically says is that almost all of our oil comes from our neighbors. So we're not getting hardly any oil from the Middle East anymore. In fact, the only oil that we get from the Middle East is about 6% of all the oil that we use. So America actually produces about 13 million barrels a day by itself, right? Half of our entire imports that we bring in from anywhere other than America come from Canada, right? So Canada is a massive trade partner as it pertains to oil. Other countries that are on here, like Mexico, delivers almost 10% of our oil, if you guys can believe that. We actually get some oil from Russia, you know, which again, we're not supposed to do that, but you know, I think we all heard the story is that once that oil hits the market, it almost doesn't matter what country it comes from. So America actually buys oil from Russia as well. But the point is that the Middle East is not the mecca for oil that it used to be. In fact, most other countries around the world are sending us oil, right? We're buying our oil from these other countries, and the Middle East is not worth this amount of trouble, right? The amount of effort that we're putting into keeping the Middle East as this, again, this old sage kind of a place is just not worth it. We're sending literally 2 entire naval, what do they call them, battleship groups, whatever. We're sending both those things over there, and It's not worth it. Each one of these carrier groups costs about $20 million a day just to keep upkeep on, right? So imagine we're spending whatever, $40 million a day to go over there and talk shit to Iran, and for what? Like, why? What are we defending over there? 6% of oil, right? They tell us that it's this massive strategic area and that we need to make sure that we keep it, safe over there, and that we keep the oil flowing, and that we keep everyone playing nice together. When the truth is that Iran isn't the worst player over in the Middle East, guys. Again, this is not 1970, guys. The Saudi Arabia is not sending us 30% of all the oil that America uses, right? Iraq doesn't have oil, is not sending us a ton of oil, right? Afghanistan, it does not have any oil. Like, all these countries that we're going to over there, they're not actually impacting America in the way that we think they are. But there's still this wild emphasis on protecting this region, okay? And the reason we're protecting this region is that we're essentially protecting the country of Israel, right? Which, again, they always say, well, we're protecting democracies, right? We got to defend, this is our ally, and, we got allies everywhere, for being completely honest, but for some reason, we spend a lot of time over in this region that, again, is not strategically important to America anymore. And some people say, well, we get counterintelligence information from Israel. Like, they give us cybersecurity information. They're a tech country, and I'm here to tell you guys that these guys do nothing. They really do nothing for us. And I don't know how to make this clearer to you guys as to how, not irrelevant, but how not important the Middle East has become. And again, the Middle East is a great place, but again, you aren't going to go to Saudi Arabia. No one's going to the UAE. We're not hanging out in Abu Dhabi, right? No one's going to Kuwait. No one's going to Jordan. No one's really going to Israel. Yet, we are funneling all of these resources over there because everyone that runs our government today is literally part of this geriatric class of elite people that we have in this country. And again, we're acting like it's 1970. Our foreign policy is literally acting like it's 1970. So again, we're acting like Saudi Arabia has 30% of our oil, right? We're getting oil from Kuwait. We're getting oil from Libya. We're getting oil from all these places when in fact we don't hardly get any oil from any of these places, right? And again, so Cowboy Troy's here. Cowboy Troy, good to see you, dude. So Troy, we're talking about how basically our foreign policy is 30 years out of date. It's so old, and it's because the people that we have in power are literally living like it's the fucking Cold War. And the Cold War is over, right? Like we won. We're good here, but we're still sending our resources over to the Middle East and trying to keep this place, sane, essentially, using tons of our Navy, tens of thousands of our troops, right? And when they say there's no boots on the ground, you got to remember there's 5,000 people on one of these carriers. There's a lot of people. And then you go into the destroyers, the whole carrier group, we're sending a lot of people over there. It costs about $20 million a day for each one of these carrier groups just to maintain all the troops, to maintain the fuel, to maintain the vehicles, the planes, the ships, all this kind of stuff, the surveillance. It is a massive cost. And to protect essentially 6% of the oil that America brings in. So we produce most of our own oil, right? Which is a cool thing, right? We're producing I think it was like 40% of our own oil. Canada sends us 50% of all the oil that we import. Mexico, believe it or not, sends us more oil than Saudi Arabia does, right? So again, we're kind of protecting ghosts in a way. And so that's kind of something we're talking about today. And again, we're talking about Starship Troopers because it's one of my favorite movies, and it's super current. It's very relevant today. And we're going to talk a little bit about kind of if we continue down this policy, we continue in this situation where we're letting these old geriatric people dictate our policy today as though it's 1964 again. We're going to be in a lot of trouble, guys. And you couple in conspiracy theories like the Epstein files and the high cost of living and all these other things that are going on, the class war between the haves and the have-nots. It's ripe for some kind of conflict to reset things. And if we look back at World War II, Troy, that's exactly what happened when we did World War II. So, all right, more comments here. So let's see what Troy's saying today. I agree. These people mentally is out of date. Yeah, and that's what it seems like to me. We just can't seem to get the younger generations to act in our interest. These old geriatric people just have control over everything, and they won't let go of it. Which is why Social Security is going to go bankrupt, why Medicare, is going to potentially bankrupt this country if, again, we keep escalating the costs on everything and just simply asking for the taxpayer to pay for it without, any question. If we don't pay for it, they just print all the money, and then give it to the old people so that the old people can live forever, and the price of their homes never go down. It's a wild situation, man. So that's what we're gonna talk about today. All right, Troy says, what else you got? Yeah, now we are going for Iran. So 20% of the world's oil. Yeah, but okay, that's right. The dollar is crashing. Yeah, the dollar is going to crash. But Troy, again, what I'm telling you is what you got to look at, man, is you got to look at what America uses, right? So the truth is that our entire government is saying that this Middle East is some massive strategic place that we have to, take care of, right? We got to protect our interests, right? We got to protect our allies over there. And the truth is that it hasn't been relevant in a decade, because again, Canada produces significantly more oil than the entire Middle East. The Mexico produces more oil than Saudi Arabia. Like the things, not the tides, but the regions have changed where we're getting all of our oil. And I just don't think that people understand that, shit done changed, right? Like things are different now. And again, we're acting like, again, it's 1970 or something like that. I don't know what we do about that. So, okay, that's right. The dollar's crashing. Yeah, I know. We all know the dollar's crashing. The dollar's fiat, right? And back when it was backed by gold, the dollar meant something. But when you let the Fed come in and essentially print money forever, and again, there's nobody to push back on the Fed printing money because the government, again, cannot afford a recession, right? They're not going to let large corporations go bust. They're not going to do anything that is going to help the younger class of people because, unfortunately, the boomers keep living. Right? These old people will not die, and we'll pay whatever we have to via Medicare, right? We'll pay whatever we have to keep these people alive and keep them voting, right? We'll keep the values of their homes up forever and rising in order to keep them happy, right? So we're not going to build any more homes. We're not going to try and lower the cost of healthcare. They're just protecting this class of people. And again, the Social Security thing, when Social Security was started, there was something like 20 people paying into Social Security for every one recipient. Now it's like 3 people paying in with one recipient. Oh yeah, and everyone's living 15 years longer than when it started, So, healthcare costs up, people living longer, less people paying into the system. It's a bomb ready to go off, and I don't know how we fix it. But I do know that when we had World War II, right, we were just coming out of the Depression. The New Deal had come in, 33, I think 33, 34, something like that. And you had all this injection of liquidity coming into the average citizen in America. Well, then fast forward to 41, then we start the war effort. 41, you went from a economy that was starting to move to a supercharged economy where you went from a debt of essentially we had a $40 billion debt at the time. I think we went up to $250 billion in basically 10 years. That's how quickly we ramped up by just injecting massive amounts of liquidity. Suddenly you got manufacturing popping up everywhere. I mean, everyone that was unemployed went right to work. I mean, the unemployment rate was something like 0.2%. I mean, it wasn't even 1%. It was so low because everybody was freaking working. Everybody was supporting the war effort, and it ended up working out great for us. I mean, and again, the thing is that the difference between now and then is that we didn't have a ton of debt. We have so much debt today that the only way to get rid of this debt is essentially to tell everyone, hey, we're not paying your debt anymore. Because every year this goes on, Troy, basically what happens is you end up going from 1 trillion, right, which is what we're paying just in interest today, to 1.1 trillion, right? Then we're going to go to 1.2 trillion, and then we're going to 1.4 trillion, and it is just going to completely engulf the entire budget, every single tax dollar that we have, right? There'll be no money for the military, no more money for Social Security, no more money for Medicaid, which is literally 70% of our budget right now. It's a big number, dude. And once this happens, I mean, we're just in deep shit. The average citizen is gonna be like, fuck this, I'm not paying taxes anymore because every dollar that I pay is gonna go to these people that are supposed to have died 10 years ago, and I keep having to pay for them, So we end up in a really horrible situation, and the fastest way to reset the situation that we have today is essentially to start a world war, and that's kind of where I think we're going. So, okay, let's see, Cowboy Troy 11. So I've heard a lot about crypto taking over in some years. What's your thoughts? No, crypto's not gonna do anything. Crypto's gonna be like comic books. So I'm an avid comic book collector. I've been collecting comic books my entire life. And the truth is that crypto, I mean, what's it limited to? I think it's limited to like, what is like 22 million coins or something like that. I forget exactly what it is, but it's essentially going to be something that is not able to be reproduced. Therefore, it will have value. And the more people you can get wanting to acquire this thing, right? Whether it's crypto, whether it's baseball cards, comic books, whatever, art, like it's all the same kind of thing. The problem with crypto, at least in my estimation, is that it's digital, and anything that is digital can be reproduced. So when they say that it can't be reproduced, it's going to be limited to whatever, so many coins. Like, I just don't believe it. And again, when AI gets smart enough, or you bring in something that's called quantum computing, when this thing comes in, they'll probably end up cracking this 22 million or whatever that number is, and essentially you're going to end up with more people with more coins, and then you end up in kind of a fraud situation. So I don't think crypto's going to last, and clearly we're seeing it right now. Crypto is on the decline. Now, if the federal government were to, what's what I'm looking for, were to bring crypto in as some form of legitimate or legal tender, as they say, then we got a different situation going on there. Then maybe you might have a new form of currency or another form of currency that we could use. But right now, the dollar's dead. Like, again, because you can print it at infinitum, it has no value. And that's why the dollar keeps losing its value and the cost of everything keeps going up, So again, everyone thinks that it's essentially inflation that's causing prices to raise, and it's not necessarily just inflation, right? When you print a dollar, right, the anyone else that has that dollar is literally worth less. So not only are the prices going up, but it buys less. And I don't think people quite understand that. They think it's just, tariffs, and it's just scarcity, supply chains, all these other things. And in truth, it's not, dude. It's much more complicated. I think people want to give thought to it, So that's kind of what I say. I don't think crypto is a bad thing, but unless the federal government gets involved in it, I think it's going to steadily decline. It'll probably go up again, but it's all about excitement, right? And one of the great things about crypto, what really made crypto, I think, so hot was during COVID. Several things, right? So let's back up here. Let's talk about COVID real quick, and we're talking about in relationship to crypto. So if you look at what happened during COVID, and I remember this because I would trade in stocks like crazy, man. I was throwing so much money into the stock market because we just had so much money coming in because everyone was spending, buying furniture. I had so much money, dude. It was awesome, and I lost it all. Like, stock market tanked, right? Comic books tanked, cards tanked, all this stuff inevitably tanked. But when COVID was happening, comic books through the roof, stocks through the roof, baseball cards through the roof, art through the roof, crypto through the roof. Like, everything just shot up, right? Because again, so much cash was being splashed around. Everything crashed, right? Crypto was just one of the last things to crash, right? I think crypto's at what's it, like 70 something, I think. 76,000 is the last time I saw it. I don't know what it's at now. But I think the high was something like 120-ish, something like that. I wish Sun was in here. Sun would tell me. But yeah, I think that it's on the decline down, just like comic books have gone down, baseball cards have gone down. Hell, classic cars have gone. I'm a big car guy. If you looked at, like, I was looking at Audi R8s, a lot of Audi R8s at the time. Before COVID, I looked at buying an Audi R8. I ended up buying a Lotus Evora instead. But I was looking at the Audi R8s. They were going for like 60 grand. When COVID came in, they jumped up to almost $100,000, right? And for what? It's because everyone had so much cash, they were just buying shit. So now they've come back to where they're kind of in the 70 and 80 slash range, but they're getting ready to drop even more because, again, as we move further and further away from COVID, as the Fed continues to bring up interest rates, it continues to ebb the demand for everything. And again, the prices are coming down, So I think that's what crypto is, man. I think crypto is just, unless the federal government establishes it as a legal form of tender, like, I don't see how it goes up. There's got to be hype. I mean, you got to have Michael Saylor, you got to have Grant Cardone. These guys that are complete zealots for crypto. I mean, these guys really got to start pushing the hype about it. Otherwise, it's going to lose its traction. So, Cowboy, I know it's a long answer, but that's kind of how I think crypto's going. So I think there's something to it, man. But it's, again, you got to get more buy-in from people because hype alone is not going to drive it up. So, okay, so I've heard a lot about crypto tanking over the years. What's your thoughts? Okay, got you. I made a ton on oil and gas stocks during COVID. Yeah, and again, I bought BTU, which is Peabody. Made a bunch of money on that, and I bought Rig. Rig was the company. It's called Transocean. They're the biggest supplier of the offshore oil rigs, bought them, made a bunch of money on them. And of course, AMC, I bought a bunch of AMC. I made like $8,000 fucking trading AMC. And then when Trump stock came out, I was there on day one. I bought 100 shares of Trump stock when it was at like, I think it started like $5. By the end of the day, it was worth $150. Cashed out, made a shit ton of money on that one too. So that was wild times, man. Stock market was just on fire during COVID. So it was a lot of fun though. But anyway, yeah, that's kind of where I stand on that. So some of the things I want to talk about, continue my talk here. I wrote down a bunch of stuff. So this whole Middle East conflict, we have to kind of put a lot of things into perspective because, again, I just can't believe how much cachet people are putting into our politicians, right? When they talk about these conflicts, how much cachet they put into the war hawks and the neocons and the propagandists, especially on places like Fox News. I mean, you think that fucking war is inevitable, that we're going to go over there and we're just going to crush it and we're going to end up, righting the wrongs of the Iranian people. We're going to free them, right? Remember they were saying that Iraq's going to greet us as liberators, right? I think it was Rumsfeld or Dick Cheney, I think, said that. And again, whatever happened over there? Like, it didn't work out. It was horrible. We ended up spending something like $2 or $3 trillion in that place. And again, all the military-industrial complex people got rich. Your Halliburtons, your Northrop Grumman. I think Boeing got a bunch of that money. General Dynamics, who I used to work for, they got a bunch of that money. And again, Iraq, it's not a failed state, but it's not anything like we thought it was going to be. And then moving over to Afghanistan, same deal. But anyway, let's listen to this. So if you want to look at I hear a lot of people are equating Iraq to Iran, right? And these two countries are nothing alike. Like, they're vastly different. So when we went into Iraq, I mean, you basically had Saddam Hussein, who had these Scud missiles, and he'd used gas before, but he didn't have a massive, capable army, right, or military, right? Iran has all these things. Like, they have, not only like Scud missiles, but I mean, these guys got ICBMs. They got just an infinite amount of artillery, weaponry, because again, they're almost a military state in the way that Russia is, right? So they have a massive military industrial complex there. That is for them, right? One of the big differences between a place like Iran and especially America is we make munitions for ourselves, but most of our munitions go to other places. Like, we're one of the largest producers of munitions in the world, right? So again, this idea that walking into Iran is going to be like walking into Iraq, right? CNN's going to be out there, filming how great it is. It's going to be awesome. We're just going to roll in there with our tanks and just roll over the Revolutionary Guard and all that. Like, it's not going to be that way. And when I hear these people talk about, we have to go there, and we're basically just going to stomp over them, like, it's not going to work out like that. So without a little bit of understanding of the proportion of the Middle East and how important it really is to us, I don't think people understand what we're getting ourselves into and for what reason. So if we're going to go over there and we're going to tell everyone, right, we're going to be the propagandists in Starship Troopers, we're going to go over there, we're basically going to mow over Iran and everything's going to be fine. Like, it's not going to end up being that way, So I don't know how we convey to people that not only is it not going to be like going into Iraq, that whole region is not as important as it used to be. So not only is it going to be more difficult, the region is important, is not as important as it used to be. Therefore, we don't really need to necessarily be there, if I'm being completely honest. And we're lying ourselves into this situation just like we did in, what was it, 01 or 02? I forget when we went into Iraq. I think it was 01. But we're doing the same argument. So Donald Rumsfeld, he basically said, oh, they got yellow cake, which is uranium, if I remember correctly. So we have to go in there and get that, Saddam's going to potentially launch nukes. Remember they're telling us he had aluminum tubes, which they were basically saying was going to be missiles, It's like complete crock of shit. And then we have Marco Rubio now saying, oh, I've seen evidence of ballistic missiles, and they're only going to use ballistic missiles to essentially attack America, right? We all know that that's complete garbage. Like, it's complete BS. So there's that, and they're also saying things like these guys want to rebuild their nuclear sites, right? So there was, I forget all the names, but Fordo is the one I always remember. Again, we basically destroyed 3 of these nuclear sites in Iran, and of course Trump's going out there, they're completely decimated, they're gone forever. But we know that, well, clearly that can't be true, because now they're saying, oh, they're a week away again from making a nuclear weapon, right? They're working on nuclear weapons again. Oh, they've got new sites, right? It's like, well, what did we send all those B-2s and drop all those bunker busters over there or Moabs, or whatever the hell it is they drop there. Why did we go do all that, claim victory, and now we're back, 2 months later, saying, oh yeah, now we got to bring the whole Navy over there? Like, why didn't you just bring the Navy to begin with? So our government, in my estimation, is at best lying, right? And so what do we do with that information, right? Are we just going to, full steam ahead, let Trump kind of do whatever he wants, or are we going to talk about this issue and try and bring back some semblance of sanity back to this government? Because I think they've lost their minds, guys. Like, I think that they've lost their minds, and if they can't do something to distract the American people, like, we're gonna revolt, if I'm being completely honest, So they have got to do something to grab the attention of Americans and to make sure that we're not focusing on things like Epstein. We're not focusing on things like affordability. We're not focusing on the fact that people don't have jobs, right? They talk about the employment rate being 4.5%, but what they're not telling you is that most people today have 2 or 3 jobs, right? Which is not good. It's not normal, but that's the environment that we're in. So there's just all kinds of things that this government is trying to distract us away from. And if we don't somehow figure out how to hold this government accountable, hold these people accountable, and get the geriatric government that we have to focus a little bit more on the people that are coming behind them, we're going to end up in a world war, guys. Like, I don't know how else to put it. It's going to be one of these situations where it's not like everyone is going to go have to fight the people over in the Middle East, but we're going to end up in a situation where the poor people are going to have to go do it, right? So the poor people can't make any money. They're destitute. People like me lived in the Midwest forever. Like, we're the people that signed up for the military. We're all going to end up going over there and fighting this war that, again, isn't even strategically important to America anymore because it's not 1973 anymore. So there's no reason to have all these assets over there. But for some reason we do. And I can't figure out how we fix that. I don't know, other than talking about it, how we get the American people to understand that this isn't as relevant as it used to be. And the people that we put in power, and again, Marco Rubio should know better. He's actually a young guy, but he's acting like a neocon from 1974. And the guy he's wildly dishonest when he says that these ballistic missiles are only made to target America. Like, we all know that no country in the Middle East is trying to target America. The only one that's causing any trouble over there, yes, and I get that Iran and Israel, they like to fight each other, and they like to, throw stones and sticks and shit, rockets, whatever. Truth is that those are the only 2 countries that are kind of fighting with each other, right? Truth is that Israel comes in and they just take out any country that they want, but they haven't been able to take out Iran. So bring in Big Daddy America, and Big Daddy America will take care of it. I mean, we know what happened in Sudan. We know what happened in Libya. We know what happened in Gaza. We know what happened in, I already said Libya, right? So again, they're just moving from country to country to country to country. We know what's happened in Syria. Like, a lot of these places are they're decimated. They're in ruin. They're super chaotic. Yet, here's Israel just living large, right? With, again, big America behind it all the time, So we got a super outdated government, guys, and it's insane. Like, I tried to talk a little bit this morning about the IAEA, which is the Atomic Energy Agency. This is the agency that goes in and essentially monitors everyone's nuclear weapons, looks to make sure that you're staying above board and all this kind of stuff. Israel doesn't have to have any of their stuff looked at, right? They just say, well, we have no nukes, even though everyone knows they have nukes. Everyone knows that they have their own enrichment facilities, but again, IAEA never goes over there yet. Supposedly, Iran's out of compliance, right? Because they were part of this thing called the NPT, right? The Non-Proliferation Treaty Agreement. And because they signed on to that thing, well, they're responsible for everything. So now America essentially can say, well, we're going to go into Iran because these guys clearly aren't having inspections done, right? They're out of compliance with their nuclear program, right? And so, again, Israel, no questions. They're fine. They can have bombs. They can have it all. Iran can't have anything, right? And if Iran wants to enrich their uranium above 60%, well, suddenly we got to send our fucking entire Navy over there, and we have to, I guess, start a war in the Middle East if Iran doesn't go back into compliance. And then you got this crazy Rubio guy saying, well, these guys can't have ballistic missiles. They can't have this stuff because we know that's going to be there to attack America. And again, no country would give up its ballistic missiles. Like we wouldn't do that, right? But they'll say, well, they're out of compliance, and they could potentially put those nukes on those ballistic missiles, right? Which we all know is complete horseshit. These two countries are not playing by the same set of rules. If you Google this conflict or you grok this conflict, you'll find out that the AIs themselves even call this a wild double standard. So anyway, it's a big. I just think it's very important that people understand that we are not playing the game over there that we think that we're playing. And when television tells you that this is a strategically important region, it is not. And did it used to be? 100%. But it is no longer as important as it used to be, and therefore we are defending ghosts, guys. We have a foreign policy that is from the 1970s and the 1980s, right? Again, Saudi Arabia doesn't hardly produce any oil compared to places like Canada, places like Mexico, right? We're acting as though we need to go over there and defend this area. We're acting like we got Russia over here getting ready to come over and invade America. Like, those days are over, But again, when your government's made up of geriatric boomers, like, what are you going to get? So we're in deep trouble. And anyway, I just thought I would try and paint this picture for you guys so that you kind of understand that you're being fed a massive amount of propaganda. And the scariest part about it is now we have things like AI, right? And we have all these algorithms on Instagram, on Google, all these algorithms on TikTok, on YouTube, these kind of places, and they're literally feeding you guys the information that they need to feed you instead of giving you super relevant context, So anyway, I don't know how people are going to like this content. Again, people love the Epstein stuff. They love the woodworking stuff. But again, as someone who's fairly anti-war, I'm kind of the guy that says carry a big fucking stick around. And again, if people come at you, you swat them, but you don't go looking to swat people, right? You wait for them to come to you, and then you go deal with them. And that's what Trump was supposed to be. But Trump's turned into basically one of these, these neocon boomer guys that thinks, again, it's 1974, and it just isn't, So it's too bad, and hopefully we don't have to go over there and fight because, again, I don't want my fellow citizens to go over to some shithole part of the world where, again, none of us are ever going to go, and the product that used to be super relevant over there no longer exists there, So anyway, I hope you guys have a fantastic day, and we'll do another talk tomorrow. Remember, today I'm going to show you guys how I'm turning part of my wood shop into a CNC station, right? So we got a new CNC, so I'll unbox the CNC. I'll kind of show you guys what I got going on over there. And as I was starting to clean this stuff up and I'm digging all this crap that's out of there, what I'm realizing is that, I got a lot of cool shit back there. There's a lot of cool old jigs. There's old pieces of furniture that I built, mock-ups and prototypes of things that I built over my 10 years being here. And so it's kind of like a little bit of a flashback in time for me, a walk down memory lane, and it was really cool. It was very nostalgic, and I thought that I would share that with you guys about 5 o'clock, So you like that kind of stuff, you want to kind of see what I got going on there, then tune in at 5 o'clock, and I'll show you guys what it's all about. So, yeah, catch you guys later.